How's it going? Today I'm going to quickly take you through how I made my new vocaloid Hatsune Miku track Dancing in the Dark. This is only my second fully completed project, so I'm not the be-all and end-all of knowing how to do this, and hopefully you find it interesting or there's something useful in here that you can use for yourself when you're trying to make these. So I'll show you the track for a couple of seconds so you get a general gist of what we made and what it sounds like, and then I'll sort of run you through each individual part and then how we went about writing the song and all those steps of actually doing the vocaloid stuff. So here we go. So there you get the general gist of what we did. Now, I think it's very important when you're making these to sort of have the dynamics, the ebb and the flow of the song. As I heard a long time ago, if everything's loud and big, nothing's loud and big because it all becomes too much on the ear and you start becoming deaf to it in a sense. It's like if you just listen to super heavy music back to back for like 2 days straight, eventually the impact of that being heavy isn't going to hit you as much and you have to go listen to something softer to come back and then feel the full impact of the heavier music. So I try and apply that a lot. Having like the big chorus and then having the verse, it comes down a little bit. It's a bit of an atmospheric shift, but it's not quite as hard hitting as the main chorus. And then the pre-chorus drops down even more. We take a lot of, mainly just the kicks here out that really lets you just sit with it. It kind of has a reflective sort of feel before the punchy chorus comes back in. And I think that's really important when you're working on these, is to come up with a song structure and flow that has constant rising points and falling points and complements itself. You want the song to feel like it's always moving. If you sort of get stuck with it just being in a linear flow, people get bored, people turn it off. It's very, very good to keep in mind. Now, we go to the instrumental part. It's very simple. I didn't do an awful lot with it, and I think that's also good. A lot of the best instrumentals I make are simple. As soon as there's too many things in the pot, the dish kind of gets ruined unless you know what you're doing. So we'll take a look at this lead to start with. So the opening section here, I've got it tuned down an octave and then it comes up when it kicks in. And that's just a really simple thing you can do that it allows you to create an intro, but you don't have to make a whole new part of the song. It's rephrasing something you've already made, which is a very big part of how I just produce in general. And then we've got our bass line. Again, extraordinarily simple. But again, it doesn't have to be overly complex. It just has to complement what is already there and further reinforce the atmosphere and vibe you are going for. So then, when it fully kicks into the chorus, we've got these plucks and the percussion. So we'll check out the plucks first. Now, something you may have noticed is the bass and the plucks are all built off of the lead. Like if we look at the structure of the leads, it's up, down, up, down. So then you can take that to the bass, and it kind of follows that flow. Now, I use a program called Auto Key, which I'll put onto my lead and it'll let me know what key it's in and all the other notes I can use while it still remains in key. If you're better at music theory than me, you don't need it. It's just what I use to get me there and make sure that everything I do sounds good and fits. But then again, if it's in key but it sounds like shit to you, don't use it. It's all based on your ears as well. So what I'll often do is I'll make the lead and then I want a bass. So I use it in a lower octave, change the shape a little bit. We've got this extra little descending bit here. And then it just adds that punch you need that's complementing the lead at the top, but these little variations. You will hear them when you don't hear a change in the lead and it adds like an extra little element. It stops your thing from sounding like it's just the same 4 notes playing on loop, because when everything is just the exact same, again, it gets very repetitive and boring and you're like, okay, he just made one loop and was like, let's go nuts. And again, with the plucks, very, very similar sort of layout and idea. I just, again, added a bit more variation, sort of gauging out where I could and couldn't go with them, to sort of keep them in that same sort of flow of up, down, but enough variation that it all comes together sounding like one cohesive thing, but there's also little elements you can pick out if you take the time to listen. And then if we look at the percussion and whatnot, I often put all this together myself. For some reason when I made this, I felt like I was looking for a specific sound or a sort of feel of the drums and the snare and whatnot, and I was able to find loops that complemented what I was going for. So I'll show you these 3 in isolation. So I think that's really cool. It's kind of got this wavy sort of back and forth feel that I think is really fun, especially in these dance sort of electronic songs where it really gets you moving and gets you vibing. And if the flow of all the rest of the instrumental's really good, it makes you want to move. It's got real life to it. And I'll just mute the vocals and I'll show you a bit of the instrumental with nothing on top so you can fully listen to and appreciate it. And as you can see for the chorus, it's pretty much the exact same instrumental. We have just cut the lead out and the main element is now the plucks and the bass. And again, it sort of comes back to that idea of, instead of reinventing the wheel, how do you rephrase something you've already made? Like, you might come up with this sort of section first when you're trying to make the instrumental, and you're like, that's great, but I don't want the entire song to sound like this one section. And that can be a bit off-putting. So again, think to yourself, how do I rephrase what I've already made? Is there a form of the instrumental I've just made that still sounds good with 1 or 2 of the elements taken off? Now, would I like that section with the elements taken off to be the chorus, or would I rather that be the verse? Because sometimes you might flip it, and sometimes the chorus needs that softer feel where it's a bit more of a vibe than hard hitting, and then when the verse comes back in, that's when the song gets punchier and more upbeat. It's all entirely dictated by what you're doing. And again, for the pre-chorus, the exact same as the verse, we just took the kicks out, and it's enough of a noticeable change that when you're listening to it, your brain's like, oh, this is a new section. That's very cool. Anyway, I could ramble about beat making and production and all the theory behind doing all this stuff for hours. It's a problem. But we will now take a look at the actual vocals and lyrics on here. So we'll take a look at the chorus first. I forgot I muted that.
Enter night, shadows hide, dashing fast with surprise. I'm a spectre to your eyes, just a trick of the light. Enter night, shadows hide, dashing fast with surprise. I'm a spectre to your eyes, just a trick of the light.
So there's a couple of ways you can make your vocals really hit or fit sort of in what you're doing. And now I've done two different things. The second one I'll talk about more when we get to the chorus. Not the chorus, the verse. But on the chorus, I felt like one straight solid line of the chorus would be good. And then you get these little highlights, these little complementary bits. So
Enter night, shadows hide.
So it's like enter night, shadows hide. It's those little ear candy bits that really catch your attention and it makes it sound more interesting in my opinion. And now what I did is I've doubled the highlights, but I've also panned them left and right. So when it comes in, it's not sitting directly on top of the regular vocal, because if you do that, it becomes harder to distinguish the actual different parts of the vocal, and it ends up becoming muddy and a mess. So by panning it, you don't have to do it a huge amount, like a 20-25% is often good enough for this. It sort of adds like a stereo effect, even where like this main bit, that's in mono, that's straight down the middle of your track. But when those little highlights come in, you hear it in both sides of your headphone, which sounds great and adds more depth to the entire part of the song. It also makes mixing it easier, because if everything's just stacked on top of each other, it becomes really hard to hear anything. It just becomes a big fight for frequencies. Something I should have gone over in the instrumental actually is I've doubled the lead as well. And again, that is, what is that? 55% left and right. This helps you create a larger sounding lead, I feel. If it's just a singular one, it depends on how you mix it and sort of phrase the bits around it. But when you want something big and atmospheric, especially when it's kind of got a choir-like vibe to it, I feel left and righting it is really nice, because then you hear it on both sides of your headphones. If you've got a good pair of speakers, it gives it that extra depth. But it also opens up room. So the big core part of the melody is panned left and right, giving you enough room to have the bass in the middle, all the snare, hi-hat, kicks in the middle, and then the plucks in the middle. And because the pluck isn't competing for an awful lot of space, and because it sonically is different to the bass and the percussion, it again doesn't fight and it complements. So it's kind of like fitting Lego pieces together in a way where everything complements each other without taking away from what each other is doing. And again, by having little bits of the vocals that pan left and right, it puts them in places that you wouldn't normally hear if they were just dead smack bang in the middle, allowing the listener to actually hear them more clearly and not feel like they're just trying to listen to a musical puddle of mud trying to find what the hell you actually made. And then we'll take a look at the verse. The verse is a lot simpler. So all I did with the verse is again, yep, there we go. I doubled it and panned it left and right. And I can't quite remember why I did this, but I do this quite often. A good doubled vocal just adds extra punch to it. It adds more presence. It just sounds good to me, and that's why I do it.
Welcome to your next home. Better watch out. Ghosts roam the halls, dancing in the dark. Mean you no harm, just for fun. We play a game, do not run away. So long ago. So long ago.
Now, another very important tool I've used during this is reverb. You know, I've got a little bit of chorus going on, a little bit of delay. But the most important thing I find when I'm doing vocaloid vocals is having well put in reverb. Or you might listen to this and go, wow, he implemented that by shit. But that's fine. What I think sounds like good reverb. Because it adds more depth. There's like a certain... Well, I guess it is. It's more of an artificial sounding vocal. So sometimes trying to mix that in is a bit harder and your brain's like, oh fuck, it's just not... It doesn't quite sound exactly like if I recorded it myself. And so I can't get it to sit properly. Little bit of reverb adds depth, adds character, a little bit more extra emotion. For some reason, it actually helps like the clarity of the vocaloid as well, which is really an art in of itself that I'm still learning how to do. But we'll now take a closer look at the actual making of all this. The hell is this one? Ah, yeah, so these two are just the highlights. And I'm using Paya Pro Studio, and this is how a usual project of putting all this together will look like. Do I have the second one? The second one must be up above. And this looks very daunting at first, and I know a lot of people, when they're talking online about doing this, it's very much like, how do I keep it in tune? How do I keep it in key? How do I make it, you know, fit? And again, that's where Easy Key 2, I'm sure there's other plugins that do the exact same thing. I'm confident of it. Again, understanding what key your project is in and understanding all the notes you can hit and still keep it in the realm of where it needs to be. Now, there's also room to experiment and sort of play around with different bits and, like, even if it's not conventionally in key, but you think it sounds good, again, trust your ears. That makes it more interesting at the end of the day. You could hit a slightly off key that still sounds good and catches people off guard. Now, another interesting thing you can see here is she says, enter night. I'll see if I can get this to play.
Enter night, shadows hide, dashing fast with surprise and a spectacle.
And as you can see, we've chopped the words up. It's not just one straight note. So enter starts at an F, goes up to a G, comes up to an A for night. And that's because at first you do it and you're like, oh, it must be just one straight note. But if you actually think about the way you talk and the way you would sing and project and all that, it's all moving up and down. So like enter night, instead of just enter night, enter night, enter night. And so you want to fit that actually into this structure as well. Like shadows, enter night, shadows hide, dashing fast with surprise. Stuff like that, that actually makes it sound like, makes it sound like she is singing, and you're not just plugging in random shit praying to Christ that it works. And so you may outline the general sections of the verse or the chorus, and then you'll want to go through and chop each bit up and sort of phrase them up and down, find like little inflections that then add so much personality to it. That's where most of the time comes into doing this, outside of writing the lyrics for it. And honestly, I'm quite bad at writing lyrics for Vocaloid songs, I feel. Most of my experience writing lyrics has been writing depressing, edgy, sort of metal rap sort of stuff. So I didn't have a lot of experience coming into this trying to write stuff that sounded fun and and whimsical and colorful. And so that's a really fun exercise. And that's why I think that even people who don't listen to this type of music should give writing it a go, because it really pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And I think that's a good thing to apply to yourself, especially when you're making your own projects, is going, I make this one thing a lot. I write a lot of these types of songs. What's the complete opposite of that? Even if I don't put it out and no one else hears it, it's worth me giving that a go and pushing my skills, because then you end up coming back to writing what you're writing originally, and you found new techniques, new sounds that work. You're like, oh, that was a cool little way that they did it in this pop song. What if I implemented that into this other thing I'm doing? And so it's all building your skill set, and it's important not to get stuck in a rut where you're saying to yourself, no, I make this and I cannot make anything else, because that's how you limit yourself as a creative. And that's why I find all this stuff really fun. So again, know what key it is in, know what notes you got to be hitting, get a general outline of what you're looking for. Another thing that I did with my first one I made is I made it follow the exact notes of the main melody in the instrumental. And it sounds good, like I still like the song, but it felt very limiting. And if you listen to a lot of pop tracks or other Miku tracks and whatnot, they're not directly following the notes. They're all in the same key, but they're sort of doing their own flow, their own pattern, their own little thing, and you got to be able to break out of that and go, all right, I know where I am, I know where the notes have got to be. Let's try and make some cool inflections or some cool little melody lines that then complement what we've got in the background. The background is a complement. It's not a dictatorship. It doesn't tell you what you have to do. It just tells you where you have to do it. And so if we come back and we listen to this again,
Shadows hide, enter night. Shadows hide, dashing fast with surprise. Gonna stick her to your eyes, just a tweak of the light. Enter night. Shadows hide, dashing fast with surprise. Gonna stick her to your eyes, just a tweak of the light. Welcome to your next home. Better watch out, ghosts from the house, dancing in the dark.
and yeah, there you go. I hope you found my rambling somewhat interesting or informative. And yeah, as always, I appreciate you looking at my videos. Appreciate you listening to my music if you do. Even if you looked at this and went, man, this sucks ass, he made no sense for 10 minutes. That's cool too. I'm very passionate about what I make and what goes into behind what I make, and I love sharing that, and I'm going to try and do that a bit more. So again, thank you very much. I'll catch you on the next one.